Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, I have a Jer.
Hello.
And, surprise, surprise, a Wheeler.
Guten Tag.
Reminder, North 100 is brought to you by you. Your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part 3 of our Modern Horizons 2 set review. Reminder, you've heard this before, but important to go over it. This is not an exhaustive set review. These are only the cards that we think are relevant to our format. Somebody roasted me in the comments when I joked about we don't talk about standard or modern. And you're like, but Serge, this is a modern only set. Congratulations. I have been roasted. There is a single tear going down the front of my face. I hope you're happy. Today, we're covering gold, artifact, and land cards, but we did ask you previously if there are any cards that you wanted us to talk about, and we did miss a couple. We missed more than a couple, but these are the ones that we think are important to talk about today. First up, Hard Evidence. This is a single blue sorcery for a blue pip and says create a 0/3 crab token and investigate, which makes a clue. Wheeler, your thoughts?
So a 0/3 is a pretty nice butt, you know? It blocks a lot of things. And investigate is also not that bad, getting to cash it in on a little later. The biggest thing is that it's a spell. If you want to play a card like this, like having played with this card, it looked good, admittedly. It looked good, you know, at first glance. I think we all kind of agreed that and just kind of goofed on it. But then actually getting to play with this card now, it's like, oh, this feels great, right? Like it's just, it deals with, it's such a roadblock that allows you to just cash in later, and it's a spell. So if you have, you know, decks that, if you're playing this in a deck with a bunch of spell-based synergies, like either when you cast a spell, do a thing, you want to have a bunch of cheap stuff for Snapcaster mages or whatever, it lets you do that. In the same case, like, I don't know where I'm playing this. Like,
I was going to ask, yeah, what deck wants this, right? Is it a meta call?
Like, if somebody told me they were playing this in their control deck, I would kind of be like, all right, I guess it blocks Goblin Guide.
I was going to say, blocks Goblin Guide, blocks Goblin Instigator or whatever.
Yeah, like maybe you play this in, I mean, saying you play this card in Seinfeld, I don't know how much that's worth. Not in a slag on Seinfeld, just a slag on like, yeah, I mean, I guess so.
I could honestly see playing it in some blue control decks, and also like if you're playing like an artifacty mid-range deck, maybe, because maybe he gets an artifact plus a blocker for 1 mana. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, another card that we overlooked is an enchantment called Fae Offering. So 2 and a green, it's an enchantment that says at the beginning of each end step, if you cast both a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn, create a clue, a food, and a treasure token. Jer, what do you think?
I think this card is quite good, mostly in conjunction with the card we'll be talking about a bit later.
Certain artifact that likes treasures, foods, and clue tokens?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, but the potential is there. Like if you're able to regularly do this thing, it is very powerful. Like that's an insane amount of value that you get every turn.
I'm kind of like, I want to do stuff with this card that involves Smokestack.
Oh, yes, Wheeler. Yes.
And then like also just, you know, Tolarian Academy stuff. But
Yeah.
mostly Smokestack, or like Smokestack as like a feeling, you know, or as like a life, you know, like a life goal of just grinding people out slowly, using Academy ruins to put your Baleful Strix on top of your deck after it repeatedly blocks or gets sacrificed to one of your Durettis or something like that. So I think I'm going to try this card out in decks, well, like 1 or 2 decks around that kind of like range. But yeah, creating 3 permanents is pretty big. Those are the decks that want those permanents as well of that card type can, you know, occasionally get away with playing these garbage cards that don't do anything, because Tabernacle at Pendril Veil plus, you know, Ensnaring Bridge or whatever. Well, actually, that's not the best combo. We don't have to get into specifics, but you get the picture. Like you're locking them down enough that you can occasionally take a minute.
Sorry, I'm just still, my mind is thinking about Smokestacks. You sent me off to Magical Christmas Land, Wheeler. All right,
Yeah.
I got to refocus.
Okay.
I got to refocus.
Okay.
Gold cards. All right. First up today is Arkbound Shikari. This is a 3-mana 0/0 artifact cat soldier for 1, a red, and a white. As first strike, says whenever it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other artifact creature you control, and has modular 2, which is ability that matters a lot for artifact creatures. Enters with 2 +1/+1 counters. When it dies, you may put any +1/+1 counters on it onto target artifact creature. I'll throw this to me. This is a slam dunk in red-white artifact creature decks, which is an existing archetype that I like a bunch. Again, you have to be careful with the number of colored pips that you're playing, because you're going to be generating a lot of mana that is typically not pip dense, but this set in particular is giving the modular decks a lot more to play with. Modular was kind of around before, but other than Arkbound Ravager and Arkbound Slith, barely with the Slith. And that one's maybe a little bit greedy and just a pet card of mine. You weren't really playing that many modular cards, and I think that is changing with Modern Horizons 2. I think there's a couple of modular matters cards that make it worth considering again.
No respect to Arkbound Worker.
Gonna have to look that one up again.
It's the 1-mana 1/1 with modular.
No. It just doesn't do enough.
Okay. And now you're telling me you're the guy that was playing Hovermere over Arkbound Stinger?
Yes.
Okay.
Arkbound Stinger.
It's a 2-mana 1/1 flyer.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have a keyword.
What? It flying.
Modular.
It's got 2.
Actually, Arkbound Stinger. Damn.
Yeah. Counters on evasive creatures, like modular on evasive creatures, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
So many games with decks like this, or decks with modular, be it a traditional affinity or like the Hardened Scales deck, RIP from Modern. You get your W's by tossing around counters onto Inkmoth Nexus, Blinkmoth Nexus, and cards like Arkbound Stinger occasionally.
I think modular might be getting a lot more competitive. We'll see what the final count ends up being. It might still only be like 7 or 8 creatures, so not enough, but who knows? We'll see by the end of the set review. Moving on, next up we have the Arcus Acolyte. This is a 2-mana 2/2 human cleric archer. That's a lot of keywords for a green and a white. It has reach and lifelink and outlast for a green-white hybrid, and each other creature you control without a +1/+1 counter on it has outlast. This is an uncommon bear? Wheeler, what is happening?
2020 green card, Serge. What are you gonna do?
This is absurd.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's in it's in the right colors to put counters on cards and care about counters. It's cheap. It's honestly just fine, by itself. Like 2-mana 2/2 reach lifelink isn't going to win any kind of awards, but it blocks spirit tokens if it needs to and can still make things a little bit more miserable for red if they don't have a way to remove it. But here's the thing is that to hell with that, why don't we just make it a little bit bigger? Or make something else bigger? Typically with the counters decks, you want to play cards that have counters and that put counters on other things or get their counters by just playing a match of Magic the Gathering. And this does it through Outlast, which isn't ideal, but that's okay because it's only Outlast 1 and it's cheap enough. And then just giving all your other mana dorks, which are usually the cards in your deck without counters on them, the ability to just effectively, start becoming massive threats under cards like Oran Reef Ooze, a creature that doubles some counters, or making your deck just extremely resilient, even more so to board wipes with cards like Basri's Lieutenant. And yeah, this card's pretty good, huh?
A little too good.
Okay.
It's not obviously game breaking. It's just like, this used to be a bear. Look at me now, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like I would have killed to have a 2-mana 2/2 reach lifelink. Like when I played Canlander.
You teased bear in high school. Well, look at them now. Then our acolyte walks out flexing.
Like I was, of legal drinking, voting, driving age, all that jazz when I was like longbow archer. Oh yeah, like. 2-mana 2/2 with first strike and reach? You've got to be kidding me. Let's go. But now we get this.
All right, let's move on. And I don't remember us putting this in the set review specifically so this moment wouldn't happen.
What do you mean?
Help me out, Wheeler. How do you pronounce this?
Asmarana Mardica diced into Kulakar. I think Kuldakar. Excuse me.
Is a 3/3 legendary human wizard with no converted mana cost, or no mana value, pardon me. Is this good, or are you just trying to make fun of me because I can't say words?
No, I actually think this is fine.
Yeah?
I'm not doing this purely to troll.
All right, let's read through all the abilities. As long as you've discarded a card this turn, you may cast it for a black-red hybrid. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card named the Underworld Cookbook, reveal it and put it in your hand, and sack 2 foods. Target creature deals 6 damage to itself. You think this is good? Tell me about it.
I think it's potentially playable. I'm a big fan of casting Careful Studies and Faithless Lootings and all that jazz to cast Tombstalkers, but I've also been known to settle for cards like Sultai Scavenger, which is a 5 and a black for a 3/3 flyer with Delve. Now that has flying, but the ability to be able to cast this for 1 flexible color of mana in a deck that is constantly discarding cards, itself being a legendary creature as well as a wizard. So if you are on the splash for Caracas, you'd be able to save it. Mind you, I guess that could work against you. But hey, if they're not Caracasing your Tasker, then there you go. But also they're just like the amount of cards from both this set and that already existed that can push decks that just pump out extremely aggressive threats, and doing so often with discarding involved. I think this card's just fine. Like, it's just another thing that you can play. Like, yeah, you need to be able to discard a card and to get it going, but I really don't think that that is much of an issue.
So this is just a 1 mana 3/3. I don't really think any of the other abilities are relevant. Because like food isn't as much of a thing in our format, right? I don't even think accidentally you're going to end up with 2 food in a deck.
I mean, if somebody played this in like a Gilded Goose, like a deck with Gilded Goose, theoretically, yeah. I don't know how often that's happening, but
or Oko.
Or Oko, that's important. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean Oko. Yeah, all right. All right, let's move on and talk about Dakin, Shadow Slayer. This is a 3 mana planeswalker for a white, a blue, and a black. Enters, this is interesting, enters with loyalty equal to the number of lands you control, which is a new and different way of doing this, and I like it a lot, but we'll talk about that in a second. +1 ability, Surveil 2. -3 ability, exile target creature, and -6, put target artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. What do you think?
I gotta level with you, Serge. I don't particularly know why I have this card other than I love Dakin.
What do you think, Jer?
Great, yeah.
I love this card. I think it's sweet. I think it's reasonable to play in control. I think it's I don't really understand the lands thing, because 2 of the most landsy colors are red and green, and they're absent here.
Oh, that's the original Dakin Blackblade has power and toughness equal to the number of lands.
I know it was a bit of a throwback, but it sort of feels weird to play back into that design, I guess. I don't know.
Well, here's a question for you. Is it maybe a balance for how oppressive Oko has been? Because if you get this down on turn 2, it only has 2 loyalty, maybe even 1 loyalty. And as such, it's a lot easier to remove, and it's actually a bit of a balance mechanic. It's a planeswalker that is more survivable the later you cast it.
Yeah, I think that's likely what they were thinking, and that it's like a good sort of self-policing thing for planeswalkers sort of to come down. Like, it's sort of a good way to say, like, all right, if you cast this later on in the game, it comes down with more loyalty. It's like one of the more acceptable and efficient ways to do that. But yeah, from like a sort of flavor perspective, which is, I guess, isn't the lens I'm usually known for, but just seemed odd to me.
Known Vorthos expert, Jer, yeah.
I mean, this card, outside of just cool mid-range and control kind of things, I'm probably sure people are tired of hearing this, but anytime you have a card, a permanent, that can put itself immediately into the grave and you get some kind of value out of it, there's an eggs combo for that. Like, you can theoretically loop this card with, say, a not second sunrise proper, because it doesn't return planeswalkers, but like face reward or through some kind of codex charter shenanigans.
You set yourself up with exactly 6 lands.
It's not as difficult as you'd think.
Yeah, if you have like a Zuran Orb or something like that.
Yeah, you're doing Zuran Orb stuff. You're doing like you're failing your fetches or whatever. But also importantly, for a deck like that, like now I'm thinking about it, with either an eggs or within, a different kind of deck looking to loop that. Importantly, this deals with some problem cards cards like Collector Oof early on, Opposition Agent, if this can come down and, deal with it. A little bit, Flash kind of ruins that. But also, like, you're a deck that already wants to put stuff into your graveyard. So even just sitting there plussing with this behind an ensnaring bridge, where you're getting some kind of value or some kind of information, but not actually putting cards in your hand, so your bridge isn't going to kill you. It's pretty interesting. So, like, all the abilities are relevant, at least for that kind of interaction. So maybe Big Daddy Dakon's coming back to Combo Town.
I can't think of a better button than that. Let's move on. Next up, Foundry Helix. This is a 3-mana instant for 1, a red, and a white. As an additional cost to cast this, you must sacrifice a permanent, but deal 4 damage to any target, and if the sacrifice permanent was an artifact, gain 4 life. Wheeler.
Well, it's a War Leader's Helix, except I have to sacrifice anything. Like, okay, I sure, take my mocks. I'll dome you out. Although I think you're more likely to see this card in, honestly, like a red-white, like the red-white equipment style deck, right? Or the red-white artifact style deck, because you don't always need the life gain, but it's nice. It's nice to have. But that is a deck that will have a bunch of things that say modular cards, that you want to have an easy way of moving modular that is uncounterable because its sack is an additional cost. You might have something with a skull clamp on it that you want to get rid of. You might need to just push that final point of damage, and putting a Bone Splitter on a Mem Knight just ain't cutting it. Cards like War Leader's Helix, it's too much for that, but that is another avenue that deck gets that other kind of like non-purely red deck wins aggressive decks don't always have, is that you don't just, like, you get your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, but like your Galvanic Blast deals 4, right? You get Lightning Helix, and now you get Foundry Helix. So you get a bunch of bigger oomph cards without having to dip into like casting Volcanic Hammer.
Yeah.
It's 2021, Ben. No one's casting Volcanic Hammer.
Or Volcanic Hammer. Well, I mean, this actually segues great into the next card, which is General Ferris Breakrick here. This is a 3-mana 3/1 legendary human soldier for 1, a red, and a white. Has hexproof from monocolor, and whenever you cast a multicolor spell, create a 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. And we were talking about this a little bit in the previous set review, which was, oh my god, what was the set before this one?
Strixhaven.
Strixhaven, thank goodness, thank you. Yeah, that was like 3 weeks ago. But Strixhaven, with Lore Hold, we started having the conversation of why would you play Boros, right? Because red has always been good, white has always been good, and playing them together was oftentimes worse. But recently, there have been some really strong, specifically red-white cards that are printed together, and here's another example of something that could push you that way. Sure, a 3-mana 3/1 isn't that exciting by itself. The hexproof from monocolored makes it a little bit easier to keep it alive. This is really awkward to get Caracas, but if you get this online, I mean, suddenly your Foundry Helix is looking pretty spicy. You want to, have an 8-point life swing and leave a 4/4 behind? That's an artifact creature token? I'm excited to try this. I don't think it's, I would not be surprised to cut it, but I think it could potentially take over some games.
I think this card's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think this card is like, if you don't have a multicolor way to remove it immediately, you probably lose if you're not a combo deck.
Like, Jeskai midrange is back on the table, baby. I mean, I don't think it ever really left. It just kind of changed form. But between, again, like you mentioned, Strixhaven, that deck got a whole bunch of heavy hitters that you have to answer or else you die. Like, the list of, like, this card, a Venerable Warsinger, the one that just brings back the Geist of Saint Traff that your opponent had to force a will or else they die.
Yeah.
Like, a deck that already plays a bunch of Lightning Helixes, Electrolyze style cards. You can, like, Lightning Angel, Mantis Rider, right? You can really feed into that. And your mana's been pretty good. You're a little weak to Blood Moon, but
who isn't?
Not so much weak at, like, I've never lost to a Blood Moon on Jeskai midrange, and I never will. And that's a gosh darn fact, and you can take that to your grave. Yeah, this card's absurd. Imagine somebody plays this with a Mox. Like, imagine they just Mox us out on turn 2.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Or Ignoble Hierarch.
Yeah, either Hierarch, right?
Yeah, like...
Yeah, I'm as soon as I saw this, my first thought was 5-color Zoo, and I'm like, oh, literally all of my spells come with the 4/4. Oh, how nice.
Are there any multicolored free spells?
Manamorphose.
Anamorphose.
Okay, smart ass.
It got him.
Okay, smart ass. Why am I the disappointed dad right now? God.
Ask a
Ah!
stupid question, Wheeler. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my God. You know what? I deserve it. I deserve it.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we got Gaedrone Dahada is a 4-mana planeswalker for 1, a blue, a black, and a red. Enters with 4 loyalty, has a static ability, protection from permanents with a corruption counter on them. +1 ability. Each opponent loses 2 and you gain 2, and then put a corruption counter on up to 1 other target creature or planeswalker. So you can target your own stuff if you wanted to, but I digress. -3. Gain control of target creature or planeswalker until end of turn. Untap it, put a corruption counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. And then -7. Gain control of each permanent with a corruption counter on it. JR, what do you think?
I think this card's sweet. I really like the sort of tension it puts on the board, that it's like very, very good at defending itself, but not good at defending you. So it's like normally when somebody plays a planeswalker, like you're incentivized to kill the planeswalker and then go back to killing your opponent. But this is a planeswalker that tries to shift that paradigm. It's like, no, keep killing the person. I'm fine. And I think they do a good job of that. Yeah, they have a bunch of cool abilities. The +1 is kind of innocuous, but I actually think it's really powerful because it stabilizes your life total and stops their most threatening thing from attacking it. I don't think the -3 ability is going to be used. I think this is, if you're playing this, you're going to be plussing until you can ult it, and that's the threat. I'm not sure it's quite good enough to make it see play in any decks. It might be worth trying, but it's a really cool design.
Playing against this, mind you, only unlimited, this is the least interactive planeswalker I've ever sat against, and it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. I could, because your creatures can't interact with it, and you don't. I mean, obviously in Highlander we have a lot more ways to just straight kill it, but like I'm just imagining the same feeling of sitting across from a Jace the Mind Sculptor when my opponent has like 6 cards in hand and my board is empty, and just that feeling in your gut when the game's already over, but it's going to take 10 turns to get there.
Yeah, this card isn't as good as Jace, and that may seem obvious, but in certain matchups, it'll feel just as unbeatable, I think.
Yeah.
Like if this comes down turn 4 in a Grixis midrange deck and like they're not super on the back foot, like if they've just been able to like kill your thing, counter your thing, kill your thing, play this, you're likely in very deep trouble.
Next up, we have the Goblin Anarchomancer? Anachromancer. First try is a 2-mana 2/2 Goblin Shaman for a red and a green. Each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. Wheeler.
As the premier Goblins pilot of the format, I'm a big fan, Serge. Big fan. It's a 2/2 Goblin. What's not to love? I mean, honestly, you'd be shocked at how few 2-drops Goblins has, right? Like when you if you ask Goblin players what their 2-drops are, it's either Goblin War Chief because they have a Mox, or it's 2 1-drops. And this one,
don't harsh on Goblin Instigator.
Oh, I mean, the Instigator.
War Driver.
Yeah, Pile Driver's a good one too. They got some good drivers. They got some good War Instigators. But like, you know, I'll take this one. Like reducing the cost of your big, like Goblins is this weird, I mean, it kind of was the case like this before, but more than ever, right? Like it's this deck where you are struggling to keep your head afloat against all these really bad 1-drops and these just like unassuming creatures, but then you also have to deal with the end boss. And we've kind of upgraded from Siege Gang Commander to Muxus. So
yeah, it's a much scarier end boss now. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So I think if you are in a Goblin build that can support the green, which, you know, Ignoble Hierarch's a pretty good card, but there were already some good green-red Goblins. Maybe the mana is honestly better to go just full Jund with that. But, you know, maybe this is something you want to dip into. But other than that, I don't know. It's do
you not like this in red-green aggro just to make you go way zoomier?
No, I think this does kind of a bad Burning Tree Emissary impression if you're trying to play it in red-green. But like I'm trying to stop myself from playing this in like some kind of Storm Shell.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you were gonna do that. It's like so close, right?
Yeah, I think maybe it gets in there just because Underworld Breach is a card. Like I think there are certain builds of Storm where you will want this. It depends on your point spread, really. And it attacks for 2, right? Like that's the best selling point of Trinket Mage. Not only does it find Black Lotus, it attacks for 2 and blocks for 2. So I'll give this a shot in some kind of Storm variant, but I can't spend too much time thinking about that now. My brain won't. It's not good.
All right, next up, we have Gris, the Hunger Tide. Probably one of the coolest cards that's been printed in a very long time. This is a 3-mana Planeswalker for 1, a black, and a green. Enters play as 3 loyalty, but has a very interesting line of text. As long as it is not on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. +1 ability, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token. Then, mill a card. If an insect card was milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist and repeat the process. Sorry, Grist or Gris? Gris?
Gris.
You do pronounce the T. Okay. -2.
Yeah, Crystal Brand.
You may sack a creature. Thanks, Wheeler. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then -5. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Jer, what do you think?
I think the static ability on this card makes the card. The fact that you can Eldritch Evolution into this, you can Green Sun for it, you can Neoform into it, you can do a lot of silly things that Planeswalkers shouldn't be able to do.
Recruiter of the Guard.
Yeah, any recruiter. And once it's in play, it's also quite useful, which is kind of not that important given the first line of text, but yeah, it's quite useful. Just being able to clog up the board, make creatures, generate graveyard value, remove problematic things, and potentially kill your opponent are all things it is good at and things that several decks will want.
It's kind of like Duretti. I mean, not just in the abilities, like Duretti, the, what is it, Iconoclast?
Ingenious Iconoclast.
Gesundheit. In that, like, sometimes you'll play Duretti or your opponent will, and it doesn't matter. Like, it's not really doing anything. Maybe, like, finally they're like, okay, I'm going to alt this. Target Baleful Strix. Like, that's good, but, like...
Yeah, like, what
also,
does Planeswalker do? You're like,
yeah. But then and that's fine, and you'll keep playing it because sometimes that's what you need it to do, just gum up the works. But then you get that like extra instance where for Grist, it's because it's so easy to find as a low cost creature, and a green one at that, when it's out there in the aether. Whereas Duretti, it's like, oh, these are artifacts.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that synergy added there. This card it's beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful is a great word. I mean, ignoring the art. The art is not beautiful.
Whoa. Okay.
All right. Next up, we have Lannis, the Cryptozoologist. This is a 2-mana, 1/2 legendary snake elf scout for a green and a blue, and says, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may investigate. Or it's not even you may, it's just period, investigate. And then tap and sack X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with a mana value X or less from amongst them onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Jer, what do you think?
I'm so mad this isn't another Snake Elf Druid. This card would be the perfect Druid. Even in the art, it's not really scouting.
No.
What's it scouting? It's a Druid. Yeah.
What's the other scout? There's like another card that you kind of just shake your head and you're like, why is this a scout? It's very similar to this.
Can't remember.
Some like random 2-drop sort of.
Edricson Advisor. That's another.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but this card is I think very, very good. It still goes at Druids, but I think it's just gonna see a bunch of play in creature combo decks and creature decks in general. And yeah, it's not hard to make non-token creatures enter the battlefield a bunch, thus gaining an arbitrarily large amount of clues. And it's not hard to win the game from there.
So is this an engine card?
It's both an engine and a win condition, I think. And it's good with several other cards. Like, it's very good with Fae Offering. It's very good with another card that we're going to talk about later.
Is the second ability ever relevant? Or are you just playing it for that static ability? Or that triggered ability, I guess, pardon me.
You're playing it for the triggered ability, but the second ability will be relevant when things aren't going perfectly.
That's fair.
Like, there will be times you get to activate this for upwards of 6, and chances are, if your opponent is playing a Highlander deck against you, you'll have something reasonable to hit.
Mm-hmm. He'll hit something good in 6 cards. Yeah, that's fair. That's very funny.
I figured out the scouts.
Oh.
This hits Jer right at home. Both Selvalas.
Yeah. But that makes sense. She's an explorer. That
Yeah.
it's like I can buy Scout for that.
All right.
Yeah.
I still don't get me wrong. I don't love it, but yeah.
Or Jer. All right, let's move on to the Master of Death. This is a 3-mana 3/1 zombie wizard for 1, a blue and a black. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if Master of Death is in your graveyard, you may pay 1 life. If you do, return it to your hand. Wheeler.
Oh, yeah. This is everything I could ask for in a card. Like, they made Squee a threat. Like, they made Squee a threat with 2 relevant creature types, admittedly, one more relevant than the other, and gave it a good ETB that helps fuel the strategies that you're likely to play this card in. It's great. Who cares if it's got 1 toughness? Who cares if I have to pay 1 life? Good.
You want it to die.
Good, kill it.
Over and over. Yeah, this thing's absurd.
Yeah, even with lords too, right? Like with lords in play, if you're playing this in zombies, like the 3/1 stat line's super clever, because if you're playing this in zombies or something where it becomes a 4/2, you don't want to take 4, but you don't want to necessarily kill this off.
Or trade with it. Trading with it in combat feels so bad.
But like at a 4/2, it still dies to a lot of things, and that's okay.
I want to know why this card can block.
Oh,
why
yeah.
can't it block? It's so dumb.
So if I'm going to offer one piece of criticism to this card, it's that in zombies in particular, 3's already pretty busy. God, that deck needs 2 drops.
That are, yeah. More so than goblins, too.
More than goblins.
Way more than goblins.
You're like, oh, Walking Dead, a 2-mana 2/2.
I even look at my like updated zombies list and I'm like, okay, how many zombies do I have out of my creatures? And it's like, oh, okay, 40 out of 45. That's pretty good. What are my non-zombies? All 2 drops. It's all 2 drops. Or just like Viscera Seer. It's Viscera Seer and then like 4 2 drops.
All right, next up, we have an enchantment called Moderation. So 1, a white, and a blue makes it so that you can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. But whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. JR, what do you think?
The second ability is like basically my dream ability. It's the ultimate do nothing ability where you just get to do nothing and win. But the first ability is so bad. Don't be fooled. This card is not playable. It's not good.
I thought you were about to break it wide open. I thought you were going to look at this and be like, all right, on paper, this looks bad. Here's how it's busted. But you're like, no, this is a trap.
No, I wish this card was good. I literally dream of all the cards that say whenever you do a thing, you get to draw a card. Like all I ever want to do is powerful nothing. This is not the one. This is not the one you need.
Why isn't this symmetrical?
Yeah, then we're talking. That's my dream card. No one can cast more than 1 spell a turn. I'll only counter all your spells forever and draw while doing it, and I'll win somehow. Don't care. I'll deck myself. I don't. Game well played.
Oh, that is the dream.
Yeah. All right, next up, we have the Priest of Fell Rites. This is a 2-mana 2/2 human warlock for a white and a black. Has an activated ability, tap and pay 3 life and sacrifice Priest of Fell Rites. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery, but it also unearths for 5 for 3, a white and a black. Wheeler.
Hey, Serge.
Yeah.
I got a quick question for you. Just a real quick key over here for this one. What's the converted mana cost of a permanent that Renegade Rallier can bring back?
Oh, no.
Okay. And Jared, out of curiosity, what's the power, the power range for cards like Revel Arc and Recruiter of the Guard?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is... Sandy B got so many gifts, and this is my favorite one, and I don't even think it's the best addition for that deck, but it is certainly the one that just lets me, like, this is the card that in the creature combo decks, like, you want to see, because you can incorporate it in certain combo lines, like in looping or setting up your loops or whatever, or just annoying the hell out of your opponent with Renegade Rallier, but like, I just want to bring back my Siege Rhinos, I want to bring back my Siege Rhino, or just play this on turn 2 and sit and then wait until my opponent taps out and then I entomb for Protean Hulk. Or, I just want value from this card. But the best part is that it's so cheap and it's in the perfect colors that, like, sure, playing this with Luris, like I will have this card save my Brimaz in like a black-white Death and Taxes style deck, right? This is just such a cheap utility. I'd pay 6 life to do this. Actually, sure, maybe. Yeah, you know what? I'm a man of my word. I'll pay 6 life for it. Yeah, it's great.
All right, next up we have Sithis, the Harvest's Hand. This is a 2-mana legendary enchantment nymph, 1/2 for a green and a white, and it says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and draw 1 card. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the second best Enchantress card, period.
Do you think it's better than Eidolon of Blossoms?
I think it's better than Eidolon of Blossoms. Eidolon of Blossoms costs green. Eidolon of Blossoms has fun interactions specifically with Replenish and like gives you kind of like a wombo combo right there. But this comes down so early. This comes down so...
But it dies to shock.
Yeah, but so does Eidolon. But I mean, Eidolon gives you a card. So advantages of this, it's also an enchantment, which means it combos well with your enchantresses. It's obviously better than like Viridian and Mesa Enchantress, who are 3-mana O2s that cast or double pips, which is very awkward. But yeah, you hit the biggest weakness is enchantresses suck, right? They are weak, they have 0 stats, they're very expensive, and they are your deck doesn't function without them. Also, your deck doesn't play any creatures, so your opponent's just sitting there holding all the removal, just waiting for you to play an enchantress.
Damn, Serge roasting himself. Your deck sucks, the creatures are bad.
But it's getting better. And cards like this is very good. This is very good and very exciting. The gain 1 life is nice, but you're just there for the draw card. And of course, on cast as opposed to ETB means even if they counter your crucial enchantments, you're still getting that value, which is also why I like it a little bit better than Eidolon.
Serge, I gotta tell you, I'm shocked that you haven't touched on what I think is probably the most exciting part of this card. That like
it's legendary, you can Caracas and bounce it and just cast it over and over.
Yeah, and you can loop it too.
That's kind of cool,
right? Like it's so cheap that you could theoretically set up some kind of like old school like Words of Wind loop with this card, or at the very end like still just gain infinite life off of it. I guess is pretty cool if you're not actually drawing extra cards. But yeah, you can Caracas it, dude. Also that new card, the new Kaldheim tutor, Search for Glory, it finds snow cards, sagas, and legendary cards, and it lets you find your Sarah Sanctum. Now it can find an enchantress as well.
That's okay. Now I already said it was the second best. I still don't think it beats Argothian Enchantress.
What about Enchantress's Presence?
Enchantress's Presence, I don't think it's in a category of its own because it's an enchantment. I don't think you can it's harder to compare those two. Obviously that's very, very good, but like that's an anomaly. That's a statistical anomaly, Jer.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, if you like casting enchantresses, you're going to play this card. Obviously, it's nuts. All right, the final gold card we're going to talk about today is the Territorial Kavu. This is a star Kavu for a red and a green, has domain. So power and toughness are equal to the number of basic land types among lands that you control. Whenever it attacks, choose 1. Discard a card. If you do, draw a card, or exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. JR, what do you think?
This card's really good. It's really easy to get it to be a 3/3. It triggers on attack, not on damage. Both the abilities are good. You're going to do them every time. And it has the potential in my silly zoo decks to be a 4/4 or a 5/5 pretty easily, which is nuts. Yeah. I'm excited for this card.
All right, fantastic. Let's move to my favorite part of the set review, where we review the new lands. First off, let's just touch quickly upon the reprints. The Zendikar fetch lands are back. So for example, Erin Mesa. So these lands say tap and pay a life and then find one of 2 basic land types. Now the nice thing is, because of the way it's worded, you can get duels. I think that's all we have to talk about. They're back. These are staples of the format. They're very good, and reprints are great for this.
Sorry, I had a 20-minute piece on deck thinning.
We'll add it in post.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll cover that later. Okay,
but they're there, and it's important to acknowledge that they're back, and yay. But okay, here's something that might have a bit more of an interesting discussion: the new artifact indestructible dual lands. So, for example, Dark Moss Bridge. So these are artifact lands, which are very good and precious. They tap for 2 colors, but enter play tapped, which is bad, and they're indestructible, which is good. Is there enough good to counteract the bad in these lands? What do you think, team?
I think if you're artifacting, then yes. But if you're not artifacting, then no.
I mean, when you sign up for an artifact deck, you gotta commit. If you don't, they can smell the fear on you.
Sure. All right.
Yeah,
That's
like
fair.
as soon as you play Cascade Bluffs in your Academy deck, they're like, I see.
A
Yeah.
coward.
I know you're intimidated by this Tree of Tales, but you have to show the Tree of Tales you're not afraid of it, and then it will approach you.
So here's an interesting question. Eggs, yes or no?
I'll probably play a couple of them, but I won't play them all. Like, again, one of the important parts of eggs is that some of your loops involve returning lands that you have sacrificed to Zernor.
Produce land mana that turn, right?
Yeah, and so that deck does not play lands that come into play tapped.
All right, the next up, Academy, yes or no?
Always.
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll answer for artifact aggressive decks. It's a maybe. There are some decks that lean heavily enough on affinity that I have played off color artifacts lands just because they're artifacts, but you really want to make your land drops and have early pressure, so it's a liability. Are there any other artifact archetypes that we think these are worth considering for?
Wildfire decks.
Oh.
Although, I mean, Wildfire is sacrifice.
Yeah, not even destroy. You can get in through them. Like Wildfire technically plays all the ravages and stuff. Yeah.
That's really it. You can get into them. But that's a deck that isn't necessarily using its artifact mana early on, but wants to make, would like to tap a Tolarian Academy if that's the build they're on for some amount of mana.
Yeah.
And having the fixing's neat.
Cool.
I mean, they do work with Burning of Zinyi, so.
Oh, here's a fun rules thing. They don't. The way that Burning of Zinyi is worded, it's for those that don't know, it's 4 red. It says you destroy 4 lands you control. It's a sorcery. Then target opponent destroys 4 lands they control, deals 4 damage to each creature. You can't destroy indestructible lands, and so it won't let you or something. I tried doing this on Magic Online a while ago.
Neither of you can choose to destroy a land with indestructible is a ruling from 2013 on it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's weird. So I guess if you have more than 4 lands and one of those lands is indestructible, you cannot select the indestructible land as one of those.
Yeah.
But if you have less than 4 lands, you're fine?
Well, that works out, actually, because if you're casting Burning in a Wildfire deck, you don't have more than 4 lands.
Yeah.
That's such a bizarre and unintuitive.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, that's one of those, you can't explain it, that's just the rule.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I won that match, though, even though I
right.
did goozle myself. But there's also Cleansing Wildfire, a card that we had talked about somewhat recently. And
Is that to destroy a non-basic, search for a basic?
yeah.
You laugh with boom bust, right?
Yeah, you could target your own land with that card. And Boom Bust, sure, yeah, why not?
Does it also does Cleansing Wildfire cantrip?
Yeah, it cantrips.
So you draw a card and get a land, and your land doesn't.
Yep, and you don't even have to blow up a flagstones.
I missed that interaction. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Power Depot. Power Depot is now another artifact land that enters play tapped, taps to add a colorless, or tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this only to cast artifact spells or activated abilities of artifacts, and has modular 1. I think this land is kind of cool. I think this land is very cool. I don't know how often the modular 1 is going to come up, but as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into modular. I think I love the interaction of this card, specifically with, I think, just Arkbound Ravager, but there's got to be some other ways to sacrifice artifacts. I mean, we were, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, looking at Foundry Helix earlier.
Shrapnel Blast.
Shrapnel Blast is another one. Yeah. And the reason I like this more than the artifact dual lands is the flexibility, because oftentimes these aggressive artifact decks are 3, maybe sometimes even 4 colors. ETB tapped is a significant downside, but I think this card does enough that it's at least worth testing out. Mm-hmm. All right, next up, another very spicy card in this set, Urza's Saga. So this is an enchantment land saga. Enters play. Its first chapter is Urza's Saga taps to add a colorless mana. Its second chapter gains 2 and tap, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact token with +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And its third chapter, search your library for an artifact card with a mana cost of 0 or 1 and put it onto the battlefield. Wheeler, what do you think?
I will say one thing. It's not as busted in Singleton that it is in, say, 4, constructed where you get up to 4 copies.
But it's got to be better in Lotus formats, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that it finds like yeah. Yeah.
Get off it with your 4 ofs. It
Yeah.
finds Lotus.
Yeah.
It's a land. They
no,
can't counter it.
Sure, I can enlighten tutor for it. Okay, yeah, you got me.
You can crop rotation for your Lotus.
Yeah, I guess you can, huh?
And it makes a gigantic blocker.
Oh, does it? Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty cool. Ugh.
What decks want this?
Yeah. Yeah. Artifact. This card is it's artifact decks. Does your deck have artifacts in it? I mean, maybe even in some cases, decks that aren't strictly artifact decks.
Like, how ridiculous is this to play it in a really good Skull Clamp deck?
Yeah.
It makes a thing that you can Skull Clamp. It finds the Skull Clamp.
But can you clamp it?
Oh, yeah, you can't. Never mind.
I mean, it's okay because if you already have the clamp, you can find a pyrite spell bomb to blow up your,
Sure.
you'll still be up value.
I was thinking about a deck with literally just Skull Clamp. Like, Skull Clamp is the only artifact.
Oh.
I was trying to think of how ridiculous it is to play in that instance.
I mean, if you played in a deck with like Skull Clamp and some amount of moxes, that's still just very good, right? This card's broken in half, Serge.
Beautiful. That's what I wanted to hear.
Is it the best card in the set for Highlander?
Is this the most powerful card in the set? Is that your call, Jer?
I think so.
I mean, likely, yes.
Yeah.
It's a land, so the cost of putting it in your deck is basically 0.
And you can recur it. You can break this in, oh my god, in so many ways.
It's so easy to recur. It's both an artifact and a land.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Snorting. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Next up, Yavamaya, the Cradle of Growth. The Green Urborg is here. Wheeler.
Finally, the best land in the set. I do think this one is actually very strong. Shocking, I'm sure. Not just because it's, an Urborg, but in green. Like, the implications of what a green Urborg provide to our format for already pre-existing strategies and interactions, but also the new ones it introduces. Like, how about instead of my Corrupt is very strong, or like my Defile is now going to kill something big.
My Raphaelos now taps for Bajillion.
Yeah. Your Quirion Ranger gets to return your Gaia's Cradle. Your Quirion Ranger and your Scrib Ranger get to return your Mystic Sanctuary.
Oh my-
Yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Gee.
I mean, your Dungrove Elder's really big. Like, I don't know. That's not as exciting. I mean, it's certainly more exciting.
You just made Noel Robbins' day. Dungrove Elder.
There are a lot of little things that this does that are very strong and powerful in decks like Hoof or any deck really with mana dorks. The fact that so many creature combo decks that have 3 or 4 colors, you need early green to play these mana dorks, but also you don't want too much green because you don't have many like double green pipped cards. Like, there are a lot of creature combo decks where you'll be happy, you'll use the mana, you won't necessarily need it, but like, sure, Gaia's Cradle will add a bunch of colorless mana, big whoop. And so like the fact that you could have this card in something like Sandy B, like Pattern Rector, or in the 4-color pod decks that have these seemingly atrocious mana bases. I mean, that's no longer true, thanks to Coria. And just have all your problems solved by playing this.
We now have something that makes the top tier decks even better. Like, all of them.
Thank God. All these decks were really suffering, but Urza's Saga and Yavimaya have came to save the day.
Oh, thank goodness.
Great.
Now maybe Pattern Rector will finally be competitive. And same with Hoof. I think Hoof has been kept down for too long.
Oh yeah.
All right. Let's move on to artifacts. I'm sure nothing here will be broken right in half.
Probably not.
All right. First up, we have Academy Manufacturer. This is a 3-mana, 1/3 artifact creature assembly worker. And it reads, if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, create one of each. Jer, you were hinting to this earlier.
Yeah, so this is the card I've been alluding to that does some pretty good things if you're in the business of making clues, food, or treasure tokens, which aren't as rare as you may think. And especially if you are in the business of winning the game by doing so, it's easier than you may think. Yeah, this I think this card's gonna be very good, and there's a bunch of ways to to crack it in half. And the thing is, it's just like a reasonable value engine that if it dies, you can get it back when you're able to win. And the value engine's very difficult to beat because you're getting extra cards, extra life, and extra mana.
There are 3 pretty important resources in this game.
There aren't many other axes to win the game on. You've got them surrounded.
I mean, honestly, it also hits the umami of Magic, the hidden secret axis of tilt. Like, imagine having to fight this card that's beat around for like 3 turns. Jesus.
With Fae Offering in place, you're getting nine tokens per turn, 3 of each.
Yeah. All right, Wheeler, I need you to brace yourself. I'm about to talk about something very exciting here. Brainstone.
Okay.
This is a 1 mana artifact. And then for 2 and tap and sack it, you get to draw 3 cards and then put 2 of those cards from your hand on top in any order.
Top in any order, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
How,
1 mana artifact?
Yeah, it's a 1 mana artifact, and you can crack it like some type of oof, maybe? What are your thoughts?
Well, Serge, they made an egg that brainstorms.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. Some eagle-eyed viewers of previous in-person recordings might notice I have literal brainstorm tattooed onto my body, and that I also enjoy playing an archetype called Eggs. That's a deck that avoids playing like a lot of cantrips, a lot of cheap cantrips in the deck because you just churn through your deck so naturally through all these eggs. However, there are a couple exceptions. You know, from time to time, I do play Ponder in that deck. Sometimes it gets out if I need a little extra room, but I always play Brainstorm because Brainstorm's a broken Magic card. And now it's on an egg, which means that I get to do this with Scrap Trawler. Like 2 mana to use is a lot of mana in the world. Well, it's not. It is, but it isn't, you know?
Yeah. When things get rolling, you're like, whatever, 2 mana.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if Scrap Trawler is returning my Black Lotus or my LED or whatever, that's okay. And I guess if it is, you know, also, I guess if I'm drawing 3, but then putting key cards on top of my deck so that if I do crack LED, I don't discard them. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I think I'll play this card in artifact combo decks and maybe artifact mid-range decks, or not mid-range, artifact decks.
I was gonna say, does it see play outside of eggs? Is this good enough? Like, we all know Brainstorm is amazing. Is Brainstone going to be equally good in our format?
I think if my deck has Tolarian Academy and I'm not equipping something with Bone Splitter, I'm playing this Magic card.
I agree, yeah. It's a Duncan, like Paradox engine decks as well.
All right, next up, we have the Lion Diamond. This is a 2 mana 2/2 artifact creature cat rather. Tap and discard your hand and sack the lion or the cat. Make up your mind. You get to add 3 mana of any one color and activate only as an instant. Oh no. Wheeler.
Well, Serge, some eagle-eyed viewers of previous in-person recordings may have noticed I literally have this etched onto my skin. I literally have a LED tattoo that is just a diamond lion with, you know, diamond eyes and all that jazz. I've never been more excited for a card that is going to cost me so many matches of Magic.
Yeah, I'm going to play this. Why does it have summoning sickness?
I'll play it. It won't always be good, but you better believe I will play this. I will loop with this card in Lightning Greaves. And like the things I will do to get this cat going.
All right, the new pet card for Wheeler has been found.
Yeah, this card isn't as good as, you know, people have. I guess I think people have been pretty moderate with like seeing this card, honestly, because of the reminder text or the text of activated only as an instant, which is the case for LED, but it never clicks like, oh, what am I using this card for? But I'll give it a shot in like Dredge as well. That's actually a deck where I could see playing this card to some success. But even then, I don't know if you need it. Yeah, I'm going to lose a whole bunch of store credit after not playing in person for like over a year. It's going to be bad, dude. Like, it's going to be bad. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Cauldra Complete. This is a 7 mana legendary artifact equipment that's also a living weapon, which means it comes with its very own 0/0 Phyrexian Germ token. It is indestructible, and equipped creature gets +5/+5, has first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature. And equips for 7. Now, some of the eagle-eyed viewers amongst you might know that I literally don't have this tattooed on my body. Sorry, I tried to call it back. I think this is too dirtily. I know there's a lot of people who are very excited about this, but this is very dirtily. This is not Batterskull. And
No.
while there
No.
are ways in our format to tutor up for it with Stoneforge and cheat it into play with Stoneforge, those of you who've played this format a lot will remember all of the times that you have tutored for a Stoneforge and your opponent has lightning bolted it, or pardon me, tutored for Stoneforged for a Batterskull, your Stoneforge has died, and then you've been stuck with an uncastable artifact as your opponent kills you with Goblin Guide. And that is going to be probably the story the majority of the time you try and get Kaldra.
Okay. But Serge,
Uh-huh.
Serge, what if?
Oh, go on. Go with me on this journey. Okay.
Are you must be familiar with a certain card called Quest for the Holy Relic. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes.
All right.
Or what about there's the five mana giant that you can tap and activate and
Stonehewer Giant.
yeah, Stonehewer Giant.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, all right.
We're talking like 2014 Highlander now, baby.
All right, now Jer, recommend something get Serge really revved up to play this card.
I can't remember his name. The 6-mana red legend.
Oh, it's like a 6 mana 3/3 and it ETBs and finds something.
Godo.
Yeah, Godo Bandit Warlord.
Godo's ready.
Godo. I mean, Godo has won Canlander tournaments. Like, more than it should have ever done so. And maybe it was the Ancestral Recall that it was played alongside, but, it exists.
So anyways, Kaldra is obviously powerful, but it's too expensive.
But
It's just
not
too
as
expensive.
powerful as Cowardice.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Liquid Metal Took. It's a 2-mana. It's a 2-mana mana rock. 2 to cast, taps for colorless, and tap. Target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. Wheeler, what do you think?
Serge, some eagle-eyed viewers of previous in-person recordings may have caught that I occasionally wear a toque. I mean, it's a 2-mana mana rock that adds colorless. That's pretty good. Like, it already just is. Has anybody really gone, oh, thank God, my thought vessel makes it so I'm not going to discard it end of turn in Canlander? Like, maybe, 2 people. And those 2 people are in this call right
I was
now.
gonna say, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, exactly. My answers were me and you and maybe Nick. But it's not a lot, but that's okay because it's a 2-mana artifact that taps to add a mana.
Well, Liquid Metal Coating is a card that has existed and has excited Magic players for being able to turn anything into a shatterable target. Does this do anything in our format?
Not a massive amount. There are some loops that you can use it with. Like, thank God it won't let your Academy turn into an artifact. You can do some stuff with Voltaic keys and targeting certain creatures. I mean, you have to throw Rings of Bright Earth in here. This sounds extra. I'm listing off 5 cards, but trust me, this is how artifact decks work.
As long as you put rings in.
Yeah, Rings of Bright Earth.
That's just how rings works. It combos with any other 4 cards in the deck.
Yeah. And there might be some other stuff to it. I haven't actually done a deep dive on this, but I don't know. I think that activated ability is going to come up more than you would imagine. And often it might just be oh, now my construct token is bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you can sometimes filter into blue if you have Academy out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can make something else
exactly.
an artifact, and then you essentially got blue mana out of it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's move on to a card. This is probably my favorite card of the entire set review, is Nettle Cyst, surprising nobody. 3 mana living weapon equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control and equips for 2. This thing is going to kill people.
Why is it a living weapon? It already would have been good.
It's absurd. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
I'm going to die to this so much.
Yeah.
On turn 5.
Yeah.
I love how unnecessary the enchantment line of text is.
Yep.
I'm not playing this in Enchantress.
Well, you got to get that tempered steel value.
Yeah, exactly. You just need that extra point off of,
In soul artifact, tempered steel.
In play design, they were this Urza's Saga land isn't good enough. We need to also have an add to our nettle cyst.
So it's like any equipment that you rush out is already good, but like this just gets so much better with the more Moxen that you play.
Or the workshop that you
Yeah.
tap to cast.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is absurd.
Uh,
Let's move on to the Scion of Draco. This is a 12 mana 4/4 artifact creature dragon, but it has domain, so it costs 2 less to cast for each basic land type amongst lands you control. Has flying, and each creature you control has vigilance if it's white, hexproof if it's blue, lifelink if it's black, first strike if it's red, and trample if it's green. Jer, your thoughts?
It probably gets into 5-color zoo. Apart from that, I don't think it's gonna see too much play. It doesn't do anything super busted, and it's just kind of a value card. If you're casting it for 4, it's not really exciting. If you can reasonably cast it for 2, like a decent percentage of the time, there's no deck in the format that gets domain super well. But if you can cast it for 2, like a reasonable percentage of the time, it's going to be pretty good. And it's also very good with multicolor creatures, which is why it's reasonable in 5-color zoo. You're given multiple keywords to each creature.
It's like some sort of weird Omnilord.
Yeah.
Word. All right. Next up, the new sword. Sword of Hearth and Home. 3 to cast for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and white. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own. Then search your library for basic land card. Put both onto the battlefield under your control and shuffle, and equips for 2. Jerry, your thoughts?
I think this is the sword that's the least good at winning the game by itself, but in the right deck, it's potentially the strongest. Like in a blink deck, this card is insane. You're just getting so much value, and the blink decks rarely run out of cards. You just run out of mana. So ramping is very good in those decks. And yeah, it's going to be very good in that deck. But this definitely isn't a sword you're just going to slam in every deck. It's not going to be the first sword you ever play, but except maybe in the blink deck. But the colors are also really interesting because it's so hard to win combat if you can't block with green or white creatures and you're being attacked. Like, have you ever tried to win combat with only Grixis creatures? It's not easy.
This is the best sword to prey on green white. This is the best sword to prey on fair decks, which is a weird way to say.
Yeah, exactly. Like if your meta's like kind of like a mid-range slugfest, you could also just play this just to make your creatures win all the combats forever.
It attacks through Oko Elks,
Oh,
which is pretty relevant.
yeah, very much so. But
Although,
unfortunately, it gets turned into an elk.
But it stops your creatures from being elked.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. All right. And the last card that we are going to talk about today is Zabaz, the Glimmer Wasp. This is a 1 mana artifact legendary insect creature. 1 mana legendary artifact creature insect. Sure. Has modular 1. And if a modular triggered ability would put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature that you control, that many +1 are put there instead. For a single red pip, destroy target artifact you control, and for a white pip, gains flying until end of turn. And this is, I think, the big card that, if modular is doable or not, will push it over the edge. This is a very strong ability and makes me want to look at it. I mean, in and of itself, it's not that exciting. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that doesn't always have flying, but the potential synergy and upside is quite high. And also the destroy target artifact you control might seem kind of weird, but again, if you're looking for a way to move modular tokens around, it's an absolute nightmare in combat. The reason Arkbound Ravager is scary is it makes combat math a nightmare, and it looks like Zabaz has the ability to do the same sort of thing.
I'm baffled that you have, genuinely baffled that you don't have respect for Arkbound Worker. I thought you'd be jumping for joy with the redundancy that these cards are providing.
Arkbound Worker.
The 1 mana 1/1 modular. Like, it's just redundancy for these cheap artifact creatures before you wheel.
The problem is, a while ago I had ruled out modular. It just didn't seem dense enough, and it seemed like I should just be going for air quote mid-range artifact creatures that just had a little bit more bang for their buck. And I think I have to reevaluate now. And I will absolutely reevaluate right now, actually.
But modular is one of those abilities where you don't necessarily like it. You don't need to put counters on another modular creature. Just if you have a density of artifact creatures, I think the value of modular creatures go way up. Like in the artifact aggro decks, modular creatures are essentially when this creature dies, put however many counters this has onto another target creature.
Yeah, and I have some research to do. Look, I'm going to be placed in a Card Kingdom order at the end of this. cardkingdom.com/LRR, by the way. It is LRR. Is it loading ready run for that one?
Loading ready run.
Yeah, just wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I'm going to be buying some modular creatures. Okay, you win this round. Now, we have a little bit more time left, but we don't have a ton. Jared, do you have any final thoughts on Modern Horizons 2 overall? You like the set? You hate the set? What do you think of the power level? Closing remarks.
I think overall they did a much better job designing the set than the first one. There are less, I mean, I could be wrong, but to me there are less glaring errors in design. Like, I don't think there's going to be a Hogak, or I can't remember the other obvious one.
Renin 6?
Yeah, Renin, that one. Yeah. There's no Renin 6 in this set, which
there's a couple that are close, but yeah.
That's a good thing. I mean, the power level in this set's always going to be higher than normal, but I think they did a good job of making the cards exciting without necessarily making them like uber busted, and just like the word that I use is, or the way I describe it is, like, I just groan when I see it. Like, I know it's good. It, like, you didn't need to put like the fifth good thing on it. Like, you don't need to hit people over the head. They got it. It's good. But I don't think there's as many of those in this set as there have been in previous sets, and there's a bunch of cool cards as well. So
yeah, I mean, I'm in the same camp as Jer. I want to reserve the right to get completely sick of like maybe 2 of these cards. But even then, it's only under the circumstances that they end up being groan-inducing. But aside from that, like, I like maybe 15% of the set I'm not excited to like brew around. Like, there are very few cards in this set that I look at and go like, I will never play this, or that I won't think about playing in something. The set's phenomenal. I think it's pretty absolute slam dunk.
I think an important takeaway from a set is to be like, God, I can't wait to brew with this. And I think there's a lot of cards for that. And I think this set, and Strixhaven included, have given us 2 words in Magic that we want to hear more and more of, and that's End Planeswalker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, my friends, we're going to wrap it up. A reminder, if there's any cards that you think we missed in our set review, please let us know in the comments down below. Even if we don't have a chance to address it immediately, it is always nice for us to read them and evaluate if we think we missed anything there. Thank you very, very much for listening. A reminder, this podcast is brought to you by you with the support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. I've been Serge, joined by Jer and Wheeler. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.